Stuart Nash.
Mr Speaker, I would like to deal with some facts here. That member over there with the Maori Party has sold out 73% of that member's electorate earn under $40,000. If that isn't selling out, then I don't know what is, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this is a party that is about to vote for a budget that will increase GST from 12.5% to 15%, whilst they have a private member's bill they have just pulled out of the ballot that says remove GST from healthy food. Now, that is hypocrisy if I have ever heard it.
Order. The member cannot use that word, and I'll ask him to withdraw it.
I withdraw it.
Stuart Nash.
Mr Speaker, this member over here talked about high Maori unemployment. Well, let me tell you about high Maori unemployment. When Labor took over in 1999, Maori unemployment was sitting at 30%, just about 30%. The Labor Party took it down to a 32-year low of 12%. And you know what Maori unemployment is sitting at the moment? It's sitting at 20%. It's sitting at 20%. The Labor Party was the first party to bring Maori unemployment down to a level which was even close to acceptable. In fact, it's not acceptable at all. And you know what this party is doing? You know what this budget will do? This budget will be the worst budget for Maori that's been delivered since the mother of all budgets in 1991. This is a travesty, and for that member to stand up over there and say what a wonderful budget is a complete sellout. 73% of her people in her electorate earn under $40,000. And then Mr Bennett over there talks about the downtrodden corporate property investor. Now, the downtrodden corporate property investor, now there's a strange one. I don't know what sort of electorate he lives in or where his downtrodden people are, but I'll tell you what the real downtrodden people in this country will be doing. They'll be sitting there back and going, how is this budget going to help me? When all it delivers is $16 a week or a mere $5 a week to those on the medium wage, after GST hikes have been taken into account. And remember, Mr Speaker, there are still 50% of Kiwis who earn under the medium wage. These people are going to get less than $5 a week in their hand when the Prime Minister is going to get $350 a week in their hand. The CEO of Telecom is going to get $1,600 a week in their hand. That is 100 times more than the person on the medium wage. Now, this doesn't take into account the nearly 6% inflation that this budget creates. And this isn't the Labor Party figure. This isn't scaremongering. This is the figure that is in the budget documents. It is the minister's figure, the 6% inflation. That's the bogeyman that Mr English does not want to talk about, because he knows that it not only erodes tax cuts, it eradicates them. In fact, as Phil Goff, the next Labor Prime Minister, the next Prime Minister of this country, pointed out, he informed a horrified Labor, a horrified National Caucus, and you could see them. He talked about inflation. They had their statements ready to go out saying, this is how much better you're going to be. Phil Goff said, this is what inflation's going to do to the tax cuts, and I saw them in the back row. These members over there were going, oh goodness me, how am I going to counter this? Well, Mr English hadn't told you about that inflation one, had he? No, he hadn't at all, and you're going sitting back there going, oh goodness me. As Mr Cosgrove said, how about you get halls full of your constituents and tell them, well, you know, our Prime Minister's going to be about $350 better off. You're going to be worse off, but it's okay. How are you going to sell that? How are those members over there going to sell that? Well, I'd like to see that. You know, I think the theme song for this budget should be, I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction. Because you know what? There was a song about a young man. There was a song about a young man who, no matter what he did, couldn't get ahead. People kept telling him everything was better. Mixed messages, but still no joy. Well, this is what this budget is about. Mixed messages from Mr English and Mr Key. They told all Kiwis that you're going to be better off under this budget. This is going to be a budget for all Kiwis. It doesn't matter that there's $11 billion in extra revenue from GST over 4 years. That's going to give the lion's share to the very wealthy, the Mr Keys and the CEO of Telecom is going to get $1,600 in the hand every week. That's money that's coming from the 50%. That's money from the 50% of Kiwis who earn under $30,000 a year. or the 75% of Kiwis who earn the average wage. But it's okay, because Mr Key is going to get $350 a week in the hand. I don't think there'll be feelings of envy, as Mr Key suggested there would be. I just think there'll be feelings of anger and feelings of, oh my God, we've been let down again. Because Mr Key promised, he looked into that camera and he promised that he would not raise GST. And he has. He said he wouldn't do it, and he did. That is not nice, it is not fair, and it's certainly not what people voted for. Mr Speaker, the first principle of tax legislation is that there should be equity, and this is about who carries the burden of tax. Well, I would argue that those who are less well off carry the significant burden of tax through the increase in GST. This is a regressive tax because it's a tax on petrol, it's a tax on food, it's a tax on electricity, it's a tax on all items that people need to lead a decent life, a life with dignity. It's increasing at a time when most are struggling with rising costs and falling real wages. What we haven't heard is that Mr English said to Mr Brownlee, I want increased dividends from your state-owned enterprises. And you know what that means? That means power prices. Mr Burns was right. This is going to be a real winter of discontent, a real winter of discontent. What's going to happen? People are going to look tomorrow and go, I've got a little bit of money. But then they're going to realise that the power bill is going to go up by 10%. Inflation's going to erode their tax cut and are going to erode the real wages. This is just not a budget for the many at all. It is a budget for the very, very few. Mr Speaker, the Reserve Bank Governor, Alan Bollard, wrote a paper in 1992 titled New Zealand's Experience with Consumption Tax, and it dealt with the implementation of GST in New Zealand. He wrote, and I quote, in 1989, when GST was increased to 12.5%, the effect on retail sales and subsequently on growth was marked. After experiencing signs of pickup, the economy dropped back to recession the following year. Remember, when GST was increased by 2.5% in 1989, Kiwis at the top end had just received massive tax cuts in 1988. Less than 12 months beforehand, it was dropped from 48% to 33%. Now, I wonder if anyone has asked Dr Bollard what he thinks about the idea of increasing a GST. Just as he is managing this economy out of recession, this comes along. He probably reached into the history books, reread this paper with a sense of impending dread. We are borrowing $1.1 billion over 4 years to fund tax cuts for the very wealthy at the expense of the many, and in all probability at the expense of the economy. What a dreadful legacy for those at school at the moment. I would like to point out the objectives from last year's budget. It focused on 3 objectives: helping Kiwis through the recession and supporting jobs. Well, they had a job summit. What did that throw up? Cycleway. How many jobs came from the cycleway? 6. Well, let's forget that one because the job thing just sort of petted out with a whimper. Second objective was lifting productivity. Well, I understand the report that was released today, we actually dropped in productivity 5 places down to 20% while Australia increased. That one's a failure. The third one was to keep the future government debt under control. Well, I'll tell you what, we got rid of debt. The Labour Party got rid of debt. 9 years of prudent fiscal management, we got rid of debt. Even Dr Bollard said in his latest statement that the reason that this recession was not as bad on New Zealand as it was overseas was due to the prudent management from the last government and the way that we left the finances. Dr Cullen's legacy is set and it's been destroyed in 18 months by this government over here. Now I want to make one final point. It's from an entrepreneurial perspective. This is a case study. This is a real world example. I spoke to a very good friend of mine who's one of New Zealand's most successful entrepreneurs. He's worth $100 million, give and take. He doesn't like these guys, by the way. And his comment is that tax rates don't even come into the equation when he is considering a business venture. So don't tell me, Mr Key and Mr English, that the national government is cutting taxes in order to stimulate economic growth, because it is just not the case. This is a budget for the very few and not the many at all. Thank you.